My name is Marlene, and I'm 34 years old. I was sitting in my car at a red light when it happened. David had just called me from his office like he did every lunch hour. His voice was warm and familiar as he said those three words I'd heard thousands of times before. I love you. The same sweet goodbye we'd shared for 8 years. I was about to end the call when I realized something. The line hadn't disconnected. I could still hear breathing. Then came his laugh. Cold. Nothing like the gentle sound I knew. And another voice. My stepbrother Jason's voice. She actually believes you. Before I continue this story, I want to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already. This story might make you question everyone you trust, but sometimes that's exactly what we need to survive. That morning had started like every other morning in our Connecticut home. David had kissed me goodbye at exactly 7:30, his cologne lingering in the air as he headed to his law firm in Manhattan. We'd built what I thought was a perfect life together. 8 years of marriage that began when I was 26, working at a small art gallery in the city. I still remember the first time I saw him. It was raining in Manhattan, and I ducked into a coffee shop near Grand Central. David was there, struggling with his umbrella, his expensive suit slightly damp from the storm. When our eyes met, he smiled and something in my chest shifted. He was everything I thought I wanted. Successful, charming, attentive. Within 2 years, we were married in a beautiful ceremony in the Hamptons. Our life together seemed blessed. We had a colonial-style house in Westport, complete with the white picket fence I dreamed about as a child. David made partner at his firm 3 years ago, and I'd left my gallery job to focus on managing our investments and properties. It was a decision we'd made together, or so I thought. Every single day, without fail, David would call me at lunch. 12:30 on the dot. He'd tell me about his morning meetings, ask about my day, and always end with those three words. I love you. It had become such a routine that I could predict the exact moment he'd say them. My stepbrother Jason entered my life when I was 15. My mother had remarried after my father died in a car accident, and suddenly I had this older stepbrother who seemed to resent my very existence. Jason was 2 years older than me, and from day one he made it clear he didn't want a sister. The resentment only grew when my stepfather William passed away 2 years ago. William had built a successful real estate empire, and when his will was read, the room went silent. He'd left the bulk of his $50 million estate to me. Not to his biological son, but to his stepdaughter. Jason's face had turned purple with rage that day. He'd screamed at the lawyers, accused me of manipulation, even suggested I'd forged documents. David had been my rock during that time. He'd held me while I cried, dealt with Jason's angry phone calls, even hired security, when Jason's threats became concerning. My husband had stood between me and my stepbrother's fury, protecting me like a shield. Or so I believed. About 6 months ago, I started having these episodes. I'd forget where I put my keys, miss appointments. I swore I'd written down, find myself confused about conversations I couldn't quite remember. David was so concerned. He drove me to doctor after doctor until finally Dr. Harrison prescribed medication for stress and anxiety. David made sure I took those pills every single morning, watching me swallow them with my coffee. The medication seemed to help at first. The confusion lessened, though I still had moments where things felt foggy. David was so patient, so understanding. He'd take my hand and guide me through the confusion, reminding me of things I'd forgotten, filling in blanks in my memory. He even started working from home more often to keep an eye on me. Jason had started coming around again about 3 months ago. He apologized for his behavior after William's death, said he wanted to repair our relationship. David encouraged it, said family was important. They'd even started having lunch together sometimes, bonding over sports and business. I was so happy they were getting along. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. But that day in the car, sitting at that red light with my phone still connected, I heard the truth that shattered everything I believed about my life. The traffic light had turned green, but I couldn't move. Cars honked behind me as I sat frozen, my phone pressed against my ear. Jason's voice continued through the speaker, each word driving ice deeper into my veins. The meds are working perfectly. 3 more weeks and she won't even trust her own name. She's already signing things without reading them. Yesterday she couldn't even remember her mother's maiden name. David's response made my stomach heave. 3 weeks is all we need. I've already talked to Dr. Morrison at Riverside Psychiatric. He owes me a favor from that malpractice case I made disappear. Once she's committed, you'll have power of attorney within 72 hours. The trust fund the property's all $50 million will be transferred before she even knows what happened. My hands shook so violently, I nearly dropped the phone. Behind me, someone laid on their horn and I robotically pressed the gas pedal, pulling into the first parking lot I saw. It was a shopping center busy with afternoon shoppers living their normal lives while mine crumbled around me. Jason's laugh was cruel. Remember when she thought she'd lost her grandmother's necklace? She tore the house apart looking for it. You should have seen your face when you pulled it out of your pocket. Oscar-worthy performance, brother. Brother. The word hit me like a physical blow. They'd been calling each other brother, planning this together. My protector and my enemy had united against me. David's voice turned clinical, like he was discussing a case at work. The beauty is the medication cocktail. Haloperidol mixed with benzodiazepines, but the labels show standard antidepressants. Dr. Harrison doesn't even know. I switched the bottles at the pharmacy. She's been taking antipsychotics for 6 months. The memory loss, the confusion, it's all documented. Every doctor visit, every concerned call to her friends, it's all building the case for incompetence. I pressed my hand over my mouth to stifle a sob. Every morning David had handed me those pills with such tender concern, watched me swallow them, kissed my forehead, and told me everything would be okay. I'd been poisoning myself under his loving gaze. Jason's voice grew excited. The papers are almost ready. Thompson drew them up off the books. Power of attorney, property transfers, investment account changes. Once she signs them in her confused state, we're golden. Even if she tries to fight it later, who's going to believe a woman who's been institutionalized for severe psychosis? The construction company debts will be covered by next month, David replied. Both our gambling debts, too. That Atlantic City mess nearly destroyed us both. 50 million solves everything. We can even pay off Lisa for her help at Riverside. Lisa. Another name, another betrayal. How many people were involved in this conspiracy against me? I've been increasing the doses gradually. David continued, adding extra to her afternoon tea, her wine at dinner. Last night she stared at her own reflection for 5 minutes, didn't recognize herself. The deterioration is accelerating perfectly. By next week, she'll be completely disconnected from reality. My reflection in the rearview mirror caught my eye. The woman looking back seemed like a stranger. Pale, hollow-eyed, aged beyond her 34 years. Is this what they saw when they looked at me? A victim, a mark, a pathway to wealth. Jason brought up logistics. The commitment papers need 2 witnesses. Lisa will be one, and I've got my assistant lined up as the second. She thinks she's helping with a real intervention. The story is, Marlene's had a psychotic break threatening self-harm. We're the loving family trying to save her. After she's committed, the house sale can process immediately. I've already got buyers interested. The European properties, too. We liquidate everything while she's locked away, divide it 50-50, and by the time anyone might question it, we'll be untouchable. I'll be in Brazil, you can go wherever you want. David sighed, a sound I'd once found comforting. 8 years of pretending to love her. Do you know how exhausting it's been every single day having to say those words, having to touch her, having to pretend she matters? At least it's almost over. The most painful part. You picked the perfect mark, Jason replied. Orphaned young mother dead, no real family except us. No one to question what happens to poor sick Marlene. The inheritance was just lucky timing. If William hadn't died when he did, we'd have had to wait years. I thought about my isolation, how I'd slowly lost touch with college friends, how David always had reasons why we couldn't attend social gatherings. how he'd convinced me to leave my job. I'd been systematically cut off from anyone who might help me. Their conversation shifted to immediate plans. Tomorrow increase the afternoon dose. I want her barely functional by Friday. The lawyer needs her just coherent enough to sign, but confused enough that she won't remember. That sweet spot we've been practicing for. Don't forget dinner tonight, Jason added. I'll bring the wine. The special bottle. After she drinks that, she won't remember anything for at least 12 hours. We can get all the signatures we need. The call finally ended with David saying he needed to get back to a meeting. The line went dead, leaving me alone in my car, surrounded by the normal noise of a parking lot, while my world collapsed silently. I looked at my phone screen. One missed call from David. He must have realized the call hadn't disconnected properly and called back to cover his mistake. I didn't listen to the voicemail. I couldn't bear to hear him lie again. My first instinct was to run, drive away and never look back. But then I remembered the pills in my system, the confusion that might hit at any moment, the fact that they controlled our bank accounts. I needed to be smart, smarter than they thought I could be. I drove to a different shopping center 20 miles away and found a small cafe with Wi-Fi. My hands still shook as I Googled the medications David mentioned. Haloperidol, an antipsychotic that caused memory loss, confusion, and disconnection from reality when given to someone who didn't need it. I'd been taking poison disguised as help. From a payphone outside the cafe, I called Jennifer Walsh, my friend from Columbia, who'd become a successful attorney in Boston. We'd lost touch over the years, exactly as David had orchestrated, but she was the only person I could trust who he didn't know about. Jennifer, it's Marlene Thompson. Marlene Reeves. I used my maiden name instinctively, already distancing myself from David's surname. Her voice was surprised but warm. Marlene, oh my God, it's been, 5 years? How are you? I need your help. I'm in danger. My husband and stepbrother are trying to have me committed to steal my inheritance. I know how it sounds, but I have proof. They're drugging me. There was silence. Then Jennifer's voice turned professional. Where are you right now? Are you safe for the moment? But they're planning to escalate. Tonight, actually. Jennifer gave me instructions. First, stop taking any medication immediately. Second, go to a bank they don't know about and open a new account. Third, get a cheap phone they can't track. Fourth, we need evidence. Can you record them? I thought about the dinner planned for tonight. Yes, I think I can. She gave me the name of a private investigator in Connecticut. Frank Morrison, discreet and reliable. Call him immediately. He'll help you set up surveillance. Marlene, this is serious. If they're giving you antipsychotics without your knowledge, that's attempted murder. After hanging up with Jennifer, I drove to 3 different banks. At Chase, where David didn't have accounts, I opened a safety deposit box and a checking account. The manager, Mrs. Chen, was helpful when I explained I was planning a surprise for my husband and needed financial privacy. At the bank I shared with David, I discovered something terrifying. Multiple withdrawals I didn't remember making. Signatures that looked like mine but were slightly off. The teller pulled up security footage at my request. There I was, looking dazed, signing papers while David stood beside me, his hand on my shoulder. I requested copies of everything. I bought a prepaid phone at an electronics store and called Frank Morrison. His voice was gravelly reassuring. Mrs. Walsh already called me. I can be at your house in 2 hours. Your husband's at work until 6, right? How did you know that I'm good at my job? I'll install cameras they'll never find. Audio recorders, too. Tonight's dinner will be fully documented. But you need to play along. Can you do that? I thought about the 8 years of lies I'd believed. Yes, I can pretend. Frank arrived at my house at 3 in the afternoon in a van marked Anderson Plumbing. He worked quickly, professionally, installing tiny cameras in the dining room, living room, and kitchen. He showed me how to activate the audio recorder on my new phone without looking at it. The pills, he said, examining the bottle from my medicine cabinet. We need these tested. But first, we document him giving them to you. When he watches you take them tomorrow morning, put them under your tongue, then spit them out when he's not looking. Can you manage that with the side effects you're having? I nodded, though the room spun slightly. The drugs were still in my system, making everything feel distant and unreal. But my anger kept me focused. Pure, clean rage that cut through the pharmaceutical fog. Frank handed me a small device. GPS tracker. Put this in your car tonight after dinner. If they try to take you anywhere, we'll know. Mrs. Walsh is filing emergency paperwork right now to prevent any involuntary commitment, but we need evidence first. That evening I heard David's car in the driveway at 6:15. I positioned myself in the kitchen preparing dinner like nothing had changed. My hands moved automatically, muscle memory taking over, while my mind recorded every detail. "Honey, I'm home." David called out the same greeting he'd used for 8 years. His footsteps approached and then his arms wrapped around me from behind. I forced myself not to flinch. "How was your day?" His breath was warm against my neck and I wanted to scream. "Confusing," I admitted truthfully. I couldn't remember if I was supposed to go to the store or not. I went anyway, but I'm not sure I got the right things. His arms tightened and I realized he was pleased. "That's okay, sweetheart. Jason's bringing wine for dinner. You just relax. Did you take your afternoon medication?" I nodded, pointing to the empty glass on the counter where I'd supposedly taken pills I'd actually flushed down the toilet an hour ago. The doorbell rang at 7. Jason entered with an expensive bottle of wine and a smile that made my skin crawl. He hugged me, and I felt him checking my pupils looking for signs of the drugs. Dinner was torture. They talked over me around me as if I was barely there. I played my part, losing track of conversations, staring blankly when asked questions, fumbling with my silverware. The cameras were recording everything. Jason poured the wine liberally, watching me drink. I'd lined my stomach with bread and milk beforehand, trying to dilute whatever they'd added to it. Within an hour, I felt the effects. Everything became soft, distant. But I held on to consciousness through sheer will. Marlene David said gently, "We need you to sign some papers. Just routine investment updates." Through blurry vision, I saw Jason pull out documents. The pen felt heavy in my hand. I started to sign, then stopped, looking confused. "This doesn't look like my name," I said, letting the pen drop. They exchanged frustrated looks. David picked up the pen, put it back in my hand. "Try again, honey. Just like we practiced." "Practiced? When did we practice?" The look of triumph in their eyes made me sick. But I signed. Illegibly, incorrectly, but I signed. Everything was being recorded. Evidence of their coercion. The next 2 weeks were a delicate balance of deception. Every morning, David watched me take pills I'd become expert at hiding under my tongue. Every evening, I pretended to deteriorate a little more. Meanwhile, Frank Morrison was building a case that would destroy them. The private investigator was thorough beyond my expectations. He discovered David had been having an affair with Lisa Brennan, a psychiatric nurse at Riverside Mental Health Facility, for over 2 years. She was the inside connection who would facilitate my imprisonment. Frank photographed them together at a motel, documented their communications, even recorded Lisa discussing the plan with a colleague. "Your husband owes $300,000 to Atlantic City casinos," Frank told me during one of our secret meetings at a diner 40 miles from home. "Your stepbrother owes even more. They've been paying minimums with money skimmed from your joint accounts, but the collectors are closing in. That's why the timeline is so aggressive." Jennifer worked equally hard on the legal front. She'd found irregularities in the documents they'd had me sign. The notary stamps were fake. The witness signatures forged. Thompson, the lawyer they'd used, had been disbarred 3 years ago for similar schemes. "We've got enough to arrest them," Jennifer said during a video call on my secret phone. "But we need to catch them in the act for attempted kidnapping and false imprisonment. The commitment papers are the key. When they try to have you involuntarily committed, that's when we move." The surveillance equipment in my house captured increasingly damning conversations. David and Jason discussed dosages, timelines, the exact date they planned to have me committed. They even laughed about my deteriorating condition, mimicking my confused expressions. One night I couldn't take it anymore. After David fell asleep, I crept to the bathroom and vomited my body, finally rejecting not just the drugs, but the entire false life I'd been living. In the mirror, I saw myself clearly for the first time in months. I wasn't losing my mind. I was being systematically destroyed by the two people who claimed to love me most. Frank had made connections with Detective Rodriguez from the Financial Crimes Division. They were building a case not just for fraud, but for attempted murder. The antipsychotic drugs given without medical need could have caused permanent brain damage or death. The second week brought escalation. David started talking about my mother describing conversations with her that couldn't have happened because she'd been dead for 5 years. When I pointed this out, he got a concerned look and called Jason. "She's saying her mother is dead," he said loudly enough for me to hear. "Yes, I think it's time. Tomorrow morning." That night I didn't sleep. I lay beside the man I'd trusted with my life, listening to him breathe, wondering if he'd ever felt even a moment of genuine affection for me. At 3 a.m, he got up to use the bathroom, and I saw him texting someone. Through barely opened eyes, I glimpsed the message to Jason. "Tomorrow at 9. Everything ready." When morning came, David was extra attentive. He made my favorite breakfast, freshly squeezed orange juice, scrambled eggs with chives. He watched me take my pills with an intensity that would have been caring if it wasn't calculating. I'd become expert at the deception, holding the pills under my tongue while swallowing convincingly. "You seem tired, honey," he said. "Maybe you should rest today." I nodded drowsily, playing into his expectations. Behind my performed confusion, my mind was sharp-focused. Frank had people in position. Jennifer was at the courthouse with emergency papers. Detective Rodriguez was mobilizing his team. At 8:45, Jason arrived with Lisa. She wore scrubs, carried a medical bag, tried to look professional and compassionate. I heard them whispering in the hallway. "The ambulance will be here in 15 minutes, Lisa said. "I've got sedatives if she resists. The commitment papers are already filed with the court. By noon, she'll be in isolation at Riverside." David came into the bedroom where I was pretending to rest. "Honey, some friends are here to see you. They're worried about you. Can you come to the living room?" I let him guide me, stumbling slightly, looking confused. In the living room, Jason and Lisa waited with fake concern on their faces. There was another man I didn't recognize, probably the false witness they'd arranged. Marlene, Lisa said gently, "We're here to help you. You've been very sick and we want to take you somewhere safe." I looked around, letting fear show on my face. "I don't understand. David, what's happening? You threatened to hurt yourself last night, honey. Don't you remember, you said you wanted to die? We're just trying to protect you." The lies came so easily to him. 8 years of practice had made him perfect at deception. But I'd learned from the master. I started to cry, to shake my head, to back away. Let them think I was terrified. Let them document my resistance. The doorbell rang. "That would be the ambulance," David said. "Lisa, get the sedative ready." But when Jason opened the door, it wasn't paramedics. Detective Rodriguez stood there with 4 uniformed officers. Behind them, Jennifer held a stack of legal documents. "David Matthews, Jason Reeves, Lisa Brennan, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, false imprisonment, assault with a controlled substance, and attempted murder." The look on David's face was something I'll never forget. Complete shock morphing into rage, then desperate calculation. He turned to me, and for one moment the mask dropped completely. I saw who he really was. Empty, calculating, incapable of love. "Marlene, honey, there's been a misunderstanding. Tell them. Tell them you're sick. Tell them you need help." I stood up straight, the confusion dropping from my face like a discarded costume. I looked him directly in the eyes and spoke clearly for the first time in months. "I heard everything 3 weeks ago, David. The phone didn't disconnect. I heard you and Jason planning to steal my inheritance. I heard you laughing about poisoning me. I heard you say that 8 years of pretending to love me was exhausting." Jason tried to run. He made it 2 steps before Officer Williams tackled him to the ground. Lisa stood frozen, her medical bag falling from nerveless fingers. The sedatives she'd brought to subdue me scattered across the floor. Jennifer stepped forward with the emergency court orders. "Mr. Matthews, these documents void any power of attorney you claim to have. They also freeze all assets pending investigation. Mrs. Matthews, you're now under the protection of the court. Rodriguez read them their rights while his team searched the house. They found the fake documents, the altered pill bottles, David's journal, where he'd tracked my deterioration with clinical precision. Every piece of evidence we'd gathered over 2 weeks was supplemented by what they discovered in plain sight. David's last attempt at manipulation was pathetic. Marlene, please. I love you. It was Jason's idea. He forced me into it. The gambling debts, he threatened to hurt you if I didn't help. Please, baby, you know me. You know I'd never hurt you. I wanted to laugh, or cry, or scream. Instead, I just shook my head. The only thing I know about you is that you're a stranger who slept beside me for 8 years while planning my destruction. Every morning you watched me poison myself. Every night you kissed me goodnight knowing you were killing me slowly. That's not love, David. That's attempted murder with a smile. The arrest process took 3 hours. Neighbors gathered on lawns, watching as the men I'd trusted were led away in handcuffs. Mrs. Morrison from next door caught my eye, and I saw understanding dawn on her face. All those times she'd seen me confused in the garden, lost in my own driveway, she'd witnessed my destruction without knowing it. Frank Morrison arrived as the police were leaving. He handed me a flash drive containing all the surveillance footage. 600 hours of evidence. Every conversation, every doctored meal, every forged signature. Your husband was sloppy once he thought you were too damaged to notice. This is enough to put them away for 15 to 20 years. Jennifer had booked me into a hotel under an assumed name. We need to get you somewhere safe while this processes. There might be others involved we don't know about yet. And you need medical attention. Real medical attention to get those drugs out of your system. That afternoon, I sat in a real doctor's office while Dr. Sarah Hendricks ran blood tests. The levels of haloperidol and benzodiazepines in your system are dangerously high. It's a miracle you maintained any cognitive function at all. We need to wean you off carefully. Stopping suddenly could cause seizures. She prescribed a proper treatment plan, real medicine to counteract the damage. It would take months to fully recover, she warned. Maybe longer. The psychological trauma would take even more time to heal. That evening in my hotel room, I finally allowed myself to fall apart. I cried for the woman I'd been trusting and naive. I cried for the 8 years I'd lost to a man incapable of love. I cried for the family I'd thought I had with David and even Jason. But mostly, I cried with relief. I'd survived. I'd won. The investigation uncovered more accomplices. Dr. Harrison, who'd written the initial prescription, had been paid $50,000 to participate. The pharmacy tech who'd helped switch the bottles got $20,000. Thompson, the disbarred lawyer, had done it for a promise of help getting reinstated. In total, 7 people had conspired to destroy me for money. The trial took a year. I had to testify, reliving every moment of discovery and betrayal. David's lawyer tried to paint me as paranoid, claimed the drugs were for legitimate mental illness. But the evidence was overwhelming. The recordings, the financial records, the medical testimony about the effects of unnecessary antipsychotics. The jury deliberated for less than 2 hours. David Matthews was sentenced to 15 years for attempted murder, fraud, and conspiracy. Jason got 12 years with no possibility of early release. Lisa received 5 years and lost her nursing license permanently. The others got various lesser sentences, but all served time. During the trial, more truth emerged. David had done this before. A previous girlfriend in law school had mysteriously developed mental illness before disappearing. She was found, contacted, and testified. She'd escaped before he could complete his plan, but the trauma had destroyed her life for years. I wasn't his first victim, just his most ambitious target. 6 months after the trial ended, I stood in my new apartment in San Diego, California, watching the sun set over the Pacific Ocean. The divorce had been finalized quickly given the circumstances. I'd legally returned to my maiden name, Marlene Reeves, though even that felt like wearing clothes that no longer fit. The recovery hadn't been easy. The physical withdrawal from the drugs took 3 months of careful medical supervision. There were days when my hands shook so badly I couldn't hold a coffee cup. Nights when nightmares of David's face, that loving mask he wore so perfectly, would jolt me awake in cold sweats. Dr. Patricia Coleman, my therapist, had diagnosed me with complex PTSD. "You weren't just betrayed," she explained during one of our sessions. "You were systematically gaslit, poisoned, and psychologically tortured by someone you trusted completely. That leaves deep wounds that take time to heal." I'd sold the house in Connecticut immediately. I couldn't drive past it without feeling physically ill. The new owners were a young family with 3 children who would fill those rooms with real laughter, genuine love. I hoped they'd overwrite the poisonous memories that soaked into those walls. With the inheritance finally secure and the assets David had tried to steal recovered, I had more money than I'd ever need. But wealth felt hollow after what it had cost me. So I started the Marlene Reeves Foundation for Domestic Abuse Survivors. Not all abuse leaves visible bruises. Sometimes the deepest wounds are inflicted by those who claim to love us most. The foundation focused on women who'd been psychologically and financially abused. We provided legal resources, medical care, and safe housing. Within 6 months, we'd helped 47 women escape situations similar to mine. Each story broke my heart and strengthened my resolve simultaneously. It was at a foundation fundraiser that I met Anna Chen. She was 41, a successful architect who'd escaped her own nightmare marriage 5 years earlier. Her ex-husband had convinced her she was developing early-onset dementia while stealing her business assets. We bonded over our shared experience of medical gaslighting. "You know what the hardest part is?" Anna said over coffee one afternoon. "Learning to trust your own mind again. Second-guessing every memory, every perception, wondering if maybe they were right and you really are crazy." I understood completely. There were still moments when I'd forget something normal, like where I'd put my keys, and panic would flood through me. Was it starting again? Was I actually losing my mind? The trauma had left me questioning my own reality even after the danger passed. Together, Anna and I started a support group for survivors of psychological abuse. We met weekly in a bright, safe space overlooking the ocean. Women would share their stories, their fears, their small victories. Learning to trust themselves again. Learning that their perceptions were valid, their memories real, their feelings legitimate. One woman, Sandra, had been convinced by her husband that she was violent during blackouts he'd induced with drugs. Another, Maria, had been told she was developing schizophrenia, while her partner isolated her from family and friends. Each story was different, but the pattern was the same. Love used as a weapon. Trust used as a trap. I also became close with Jennifer, the friend who'd saved my life with her quick legal action. She flew out from Boston monthly, and we'd spend weekends hiking in the mountains or walking on the beach. She never treated me like a victim, never looked at me with pity. She saw me as a survivor, a warrior who'd fought an impossible battle and won. "You know what amazes me," Jennifer said one evening as we watched the sunset. "You held on to yourself even while they were trying to erase you. Some part of you always knew the truth. That's not weakness that let him fool you for 8 years. That's strength that let you survive and ultimately defeat them." Frank Morrison stayed in touch too. He'd been so impressed by my ability to maintain the deception while gathering evidence that he offered me a job. "You'd make an excellent private investigator," he said. "You understand deception from the inside out." I declined but consulted on cases involving medical fraud and gaslighting. Using my experience to help other victims find justice gave meaning to my trauma. It transformed poison into medicine, wound into wisdom. A year after the trial, I got a letter from David in prison. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope and almost threw it away unopened. But curiosity won. Inside 5 pages of manipulation disguised as apology. He was sorry I'd misunderstood his actions. Sorry I'd felt hurt. Sorry the situation had escalated beyond his control. Not once did he take actual responsibility. Not once did he acknowledge the attempted murder, the systematic torture, the calculated cruelty. I burned the letter and scattered the ashes in the ocean. He had no power over me anymore. His words were just marks on paper, meaningless and impotent. The man who'd once controlled my entire reality was now controlled by prison guards and jealous-clad schedules. There was poetry in that reversal. Jason never wrote. I heard through legal channels that he'd been attacked in prison when other inmates learned he'd tried to institutionalize his sister for money. He survived, but spent the rest of his sentence in solitary confinement for his own protection. I felt nothing when I heard the news. He'd become a stranger to me, erased from my emotional landscape. 2 years after everything ended, I met Michael at a bookstore. He was reaching for the same novel I wanted, and we laughed at the coincidence. He was a teacher, gentle and patient, with no hidden agendas or secret plans. When I told him my story on our 5th date, he listened without judgment, held my hand without possession. "I'm not ready for anything serious," I warned him. "That's okay," he replied. "I'm just happy to know you. Whatever you're comfortable with, at whatever pace you need." We took things slowly. Coffee dates became lunch meetings, became long walks on the beach. He never pushed, never demanded, never tried to isolate me from friends or control my choices. When I had panic attacks triggered by seemingly innocent gestures, he learned to recognize the signs and give me space. He educated himself about trauma, read books about supporting survivors, never made my healing about him. The first time he told me he loved me 2 years into our relationship, I froze. Those 3 words that David had weaponized still carried poison. Michael saw my reaction and immediately said, "You don't have to say it back. You don't have to feel it. I just wanted you to know that I do, with no expectations or conditions." It took another year before I could say those words again. When I finally did, they felt new, clean, untainted by the past. Love wasn't a trap or a manipulation. It was a choice freely given and freely received. Today marks 5 years since I heard that phone conversation that saved my life. 5 years since my world shattered and began rebuilding. I still have bad days, triggers that catch me off guard. A cologne similar to David's that makes me nauseous. The sound of pills rattling in a bottle that makes my heart race. But the bad days are outnumbered by good ones now. The foundation has grown beyond my wildest dreams. We've opened shelters in 12 cities, providing safe spaces for women escaping psychological abuse. We've funded legal battles that have put dozens of abusers in prison. We've created educational programs that teach people to recognize the signs of gaslighting and medical abuse. More importantly, we've changed the conversation about domestic abuse. It's not always bruises and broken bones. Sometimes it's pills disguised as medicine. Sometimes it's love used as a weapon. Sometimes it's the person who kisses you goodnight planning your destruction. We've helped legislators pass laws making coercive control and medical abuse serious crimes with real consequences. I still live in San Diego in a house by the ocean that I bought with my own money in my own name. Michael moved in last year, but we maintain separate bank accounts and the deed remains in my name alone. He understands my need for financial independence for escape routes, even when I don't need them. The hypervigilance may fade with time, but it's part of who I am now. Anna and I have written a book together about recognizing and escaping psychological abuse. It's become a bestseller not because our stories are unique, but because they're terrifyingly common. We receive hundreds of emails from readers who see themselves in our words, who finally understand that they're not crazy. They're being driven crazy. Last month I got news that David had died in prison. A heart attack, sudden and fatal. I waited to feel something, anything, but there was only emptiness where he used to live in my psyche. He'd been dead to me for years already. His physical death was just paperwork, a formal ending to a story I'd already closed. Jason was released last month on parole. He's required to stay 500 miles away from me, wear an ankle monitor, and report weekly to his parole officer. I have a restraining order that will last the rest of our lives. He's nothing to me now, just a name on legal documents, a cautionary tale about choosing money over family. Sometimes I think about the woman I was before. Trusting, optimistic, naive. I mourn her sometimes, that version of me who believed love was always pure and family bonds unbreakable. but I don't want to be her again. She needed to evolve to develop armor and wisdom. The price was astronomical, but the education was priceless. I've learned that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like love. It brings you coffee in bed, calls you honey, says all the right words while planning your destruction. It holds your hand while feeding you poison, kisses your forehead, while stealing your sanity, whispers sweet nothings, while documenting your deterioration. But I've also learned that strength doesn't always look like fighting. Sometimes it looks like pretending to be weak while gathering evidence. Sometimes it looks like swallowing fake pills while planning escape. Sometimes it looks like playing crazy to prove you're sane. Sometimes survival requires becoming exactly what they expect while remaining exactly who you are. The forgotten phone call that revealed their plan wasn't luck or coincidence. I choose to believe it was the universe intervening, karma making a house call, or maybe just David's arrogance finally making a fatal mistake. Either way, that unended call ended their plan and began my resurrection. If you're reading this because you recognize something in my story, if someone in your life is making you question your own reality, trust that small voice inside that says something's wrong. That voice is your truth trying to survive. Don't let anyone convince you it's lying. Don't let anyone medicate it into silence. Don't let anyone love you into oblivion. Document everything. Tell someone. Get help. You're not crazy. You're not overreacting. You're not too sensitive. You might be in danger from the person you trust most. And that's not paranoia, that's pattern recognition. My name is Marlene Reeves. I survived 8 years of marriage to a man who tried to destroy me for money. I survived systematic poisoning disguised as medical care. I survived gaslighting so severe I nearly lost myself completely. But I did survive. And if you're in a similar situation, you can survive too. That forgotten call didn't just save my life, it gave me purpose. Every woman we help escape, every abuser we put in prison, every law we help pass is a victory. Not just for me, but for all of us who've been told we're crazy while being driven insane. David thought he'd married the perfect victim. Instead, he created the perfect adversary. He thought he was stealing my inheritance. Instead, he gave me a mission. He thought he was ending my story. Instead, he was just finishing the first chapter. Sometimes I stand on my deck watching the ocean and think about that moment in the car 5 years ago. The moment everything changed. The moment the truth leaked through an unended call. The moment I stopped being a victim and started becoming a survivor. That moment when David forgot to press end. He actually pressed play on the rest of my life. If you've experienced anything similar to what I went through, please reach out for help. Contact the Marlene Reeves Foundation, the National Domestic Violence Hotline, a trusted friend, a lawyer, anyone. You deserve to be believed. You deserve to be free. You deserve to live without fear that the person beside you is slowly destroying you. And to those who think they can use love as a weapon, medication, as a means of control, trust, as a tool for theft, remember this. We're not as alone as you think. We're not as helpless as you hope. And sometimes, just sometimes, you forget to hang up the phone and your whole plan unravels with 3 little words. She actually believes you. Yes, I did. Right up until the moment I didn't. And that moment changed everything. Before I end this story, I want to know what you would have done in my situation. Would you have confronted them immediately or played the long game like I did? Please leave your thoughts in the comments below. And if this story helped you recognize warning signs in your own life, please share it. You never know who might need to hear it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more survival stories. Thank you for listening to my truth. Remember, you know your own mind better than anyone else ever could. Trust yourself. Always.